Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very special occasion. We're so delighted and fortunate to have Lopon Barbara Dubois return to the Garchin Institute to give these very special teachings on something that's very close to her heart and that we all will greatly benefit from deepening our understanding. And so I also want to make sure that everyone is aware of this truly marvelous book that Lopon Barbara Dubois released earlier this year, Brave, Generous, and Undefended, The Heart Teachings on the 37 Bodhisattva Practices. We sold out, and we've now gotten a whole new shipment. And Lopon Barbara has kindly agreed to sign each of these copies. So be sure to go to our web store to purchase your own copy. This is truly a manual of Dharma that you should not be without. Every practitioner should have one. These are the heart essence teachings that His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche has based his life teachings on, really. And Lopon Barbara has done an absolute brilliant, illuminating commentary on the 37 Bodhisattva practices. So, without further delay, I'd like to hand it over to Lopon Barbara. And thank you so much for coming. And we will listen with our best attention and awareness to these very important teachings. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for coming. It is my great joy to be able to know that as I glance or gaze into the camera, each of you is figural in my attention, and we are connected through the gaze just as we would be if we were in the same room. In fact, sometimes people are telling me that this connection through the camera has a directness and intimacy that is particularly meaningful in this time when we're not in the same room physically. For me, it's a very welcome and significant reminder that the connection isn't physical. We have physical reminders of what's true. We can get caught up in those, and we do love to be caught up in one another. But what's true is that there's only one mind, and we are that. We are all of that one mind. There are many consciousnesses and many individuals, and we have distinct and beautiful manifestation here in the dimension that we call the relative, which is really a phantasmagorical display of the pristine, immeasurable, infinite, profound and vast that we call the absolute or the ultimate dimension. So the camera today and the voice and the ears are the link. The pathway is the Buddha Dharma, our great treasure, and the motivation is that of the Bodhisattva to dispel ignorance and suffering for all beings, and to that end we ourselves commit to the ultimate path. So with that, we will begin our retreat that is 2 days long. And we'll be together, some of us, throughout the entire retreat. Some people will come and go. But I hope that many will stay, and those who come, thank you very much. And if you need to go, thank you very much for taking care of what you need to take care of in your life. And come back if you can before we're done. We'll finish on Sunday afternoon. So let's do our opening prayers. And since it's the opening of a 2-day retreat, the opening prayers will be somewhat extensive, which is an opportunity for each of us, myself very much included, to take the prayer as a mind path and to make an offering, a joyful, heartfelt offering of the prayers for the benefit of all beings. Not just in this world, in this time, although it's clear that we sorely need it in this world, in this time, but in all worlds and throughout all time, may these prayers resonate and open up a clear, discernible, and irresistible path of mind for beings caught in samsaric transmigration, coming and going and coming and going and coming and going. May they find rest in the mind path that is laid out here of the highest aspiration, the most profound devotion, and gratitude brimming with love. So with that, we'll start our opening prayers. And because there may be some who are joining us who may not be familiar with what these prayers are, I'll give where the title is given in the prayer book, I'll give the title as well, so everybody knows what it is we're saying together. And those of you who have a version of these prayers, perhaps an earlier one or a different language, please recite out loud together. It would be excellent to do that. It gives more resonance. So first, we have the refuge and generation of bodhicitta, which is the ultimate aspiration, the ultimate altruistic aspiration. So, altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. And this is the action bodhicitta prayer. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. And this is the prayer that generates the altruistic intention, bodhicitta, beginning with the refuge prayer. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. The prayer called the Four Immeasurables, sometimes known as the Bodhisattva prayer. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. And then we offer in the imagination or physically, as you have been given training for perhaps, the mandala of the entire universe and all things knowable for the liberation of all. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body enjoyments and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine, by offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. Completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial, the supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Deva Rakhi Mandala Pratitsa Soha. And this is the supplication to the Guru for blessings and teachings. Namo. To the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence, I offer all appearance and existence arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you, may the 3 realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord with 5 omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one with loving nature, precious protector of beings, heart of all Buddhas inexpressible by words or thought, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of Dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind primordially pure and unborn as the unfathomable Dharmakaya. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. And Garchen Rinpoche has asked us all his worldwide Sangha during this time of tremendous suffering due to the pandemic of coronavirus throughout the world without distinction as to high or low, worthy or unworthy, rich or poor. This suffering is touching us all, and even as it appears sometimes to separate us by location or need or condition, or even by view, nonetheless, we are all affected in this period by this one global event that brings our attention inescapably to our love for those whom we love and some of whom we are losing, to the importance of caring for one another, and to the profound truths of impermanence and interdependence. So this is a prayer that comes from Shantideva's text, the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and this is verse 21 of that text. And he's asked us 3 times every morning and 3 times every evening to recite these 4 lines. So you know where to find them now, and you also, of course, have it on this tape. And it's very simple and very profound. And when you recite this prayer, your mind is one with the mind of the Guru. It's one with the mind of beings all over the world who are reciting this prayer twice a day. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. And this is this little book here contains the 37 Bodhisattva practices, which Christina Lundberg, the director of the Garchen Institute, kindly mentioned. These are Rinpoche's heart teachings. They were written in the 14th century by a wonderful scholar, a great bodhisattva named Tokme Zangpo. And traditionally, teachers and masters will write commentaries on these verses for their students to unpack them. They are pith instructions. The verses themselves are very short, very succinct. And the entire text is the entire Buddha Dharma, nothing missing. Rinpoche has said that if it's in this book, it is the Dharma. If it's not in this book, it's not the Dharma. So he gives this book to all he meets, and we have the privilege of doing the same as we recite it out loud together. So if those who are attending have access to their copy of this, please recite with me. I will recite quite quickly because it's a bit lengthy, and but please just let particularly if you haven't heard this text recited before, or if you've never heard the text or seen it at all, this is something that we call a reading transmission for those of you for whom it is new. And that means that you have complete authorization to read and practice this noble text. Namo Lokeshvaraya. While seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you strive solely for the sake of all beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig, at all times I respectfully pay homage to you with my body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddha, source of all benefit and happiness, arise from having accomplished the true Dharma. Since that depends on knowing the practices, I shall explain the way of the Bodhisattva. Having now gained this great ship of freedom and fortune so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence, listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Attachment to loved ones churns like water. Hatred for enemies rages like fire. In the darkness of ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to avoid. Abandon your homeland. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. When negative places are abandoned, disturbing emotions will gradually decline. Without distractions, attention to virtue naturally grows. When the mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma arises. Live alone in seclusion. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Family and longtime companions will part from each other. Possessions gained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, a guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of all worldly concerns. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. In bad company, the 3 poisons grow stronger. The activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating decline, and love and compassion are lost. Give up such companions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When one follows a true spiritual friend, faults will dissolve and good qualities will grow like the waxing moon. Consider this friend more dear than your own body. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Who can worldly gods, themselves imprisoned in samsara, protect? Therefore seek refuge in the three jewels, the undeceiving source of refuge. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The Buddha taught that all the unbearable suffering of the lower realms is caused by wrongdoing. Therefore never act wrongfully, even at the cost of your life. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, the happiness of the three worlds vanishes in but an instant. Strive for the supreme state of never-changing liberation. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When mothers who've loved you since beginningless time are suffering, what good is your own happiness? Therefore give rise to bodhicitta in order to liberate infinite sentient beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering without exception comes from seeking your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the altruistic mind. Therefore truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone driven by great desires steals all your wealth or lets others steal it, dedicate to them your body, possessions, and all virtues of the three times. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone cuts off your head when you haven't done anything wrong, take all their negative deeds upon yourself through the power of compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if others slander you throughout a billion worlds, in return speak with a loving mind of their good qualities. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone exposes your hidden faults and insults you in front of others, view that person as a teacher and bow with respect. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone you've cared for as dearly as your own child regards you as an enemy, love that person even more as a mother would her ailing child. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone of equal or lower status, driven by pride, treats you with disdain, respectfully place them on your crown as your teacher. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be impoverished, always disparaged, gripped by disease and tormented by spirits, never lose courage, but take on the misdeeds and pains of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be famous and revered by many, and are as rich as the wealth god himself, having seen that worldly fortune is without essence, do not be proud. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If the enemy, your own anger, is not tamed, subduing outer enemies will only make them increase. Therefore subdue your own mind with the army of love and compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Sensory pleasures are like salt water. The more you drink, the greater your thirst. Abandon at once all things that give rise to clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The way things appear is your own mind. Mind itself primordially transcends fabricated extremes. Knowing just this, do not create concepts of subject and object. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When you come across things that attract you, like beautiful rainbows in summertime, do not regard them as real and abandon clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. How exhausting it is to hold illusory appearances as real. Therefore, when you meet with difficult circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When even one's body must be given up when aspiring for enlightenment, what need is there to mention material things? Therefore, practice generosity without hope of reward or karmic results. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you lack moral discipline, you cannot accomplish even your own purpose, so wanting to achieve the purpose of others is truly absurd. Therefore, protect your discipline without concern for worldly existence. This is the way of a bodhisattva. For bodhisattvas who desire a wealth of virtue, all harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without hostility, be patient with everyone. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even hearers or solitary realizers who accomplish only their own purpose strive as if putting out a fire on their head. Seeing this, practice with diligence the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Disturbing emotions are destroyed by insight grounded in calm abiding. Knowing this, cultivate meditative concentration that purely transcends the four formless absorptions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Without wisdom, the other five perfections alone are not enough to reach complete enlightenment. Thus, combined with skillful means, develop the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Unless you examine your own confused ideas, you might look like a practitioner but not be acting like one. Therefore, always examine yourself and abandon confusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you are driven by disturbing emotions and talk about another bodhisattva's faults, it is actually to your own detriment. So don't mention the faults of those who've entered the great vehicle. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Concern for gain and respect causes conflict and a decline in the activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating. So abandon attachment to your circle of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb others' minds and thus diminish the practice of a bodhisattva. Therefore, abandon harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When disturbing emotions become habitual, it is difficult to reverse them with antidotes. Thus, the soldier of mindfulness wields antidotes as weapons and destroys disturbing emotions such as attachment the moment they start to arise. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, always examine the state of your mind. Act to accomplish the purpose of others through constant mindfulness and awareness. This is the way of a bodhisattva. With the wisdom of threefold purity, dedicate all the virtue gained from having made such effort toward enlightenment. Dedicate it to clear away the suffering of infinite beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. And then Tokme Zangpo, the composer of this text, writes of himself and his own intention. In accordance with the words of the holy ones regarding the meanings of the sutras, tantras, and their commentaries, I have written these 37 verses on the ways of a bodhisattva for those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. This composition will not be admired by the learned, because my intellect is poor and my education is limited. However, I have followed the sutras and the words of holy ones, so I believe these ways of a bodhisattva are not mistaken. Still, because the vast deeds of bodhisattvas are difficult to grasp by simple-minded beings like myself, I beg the forgiveness of the holy ones for the mass of my errors, such as contradictions and inconsistencies. By the virtue arising from this, may all beings give rise to relative and ultimate bodhicitta, and thereby become like the protector Chenrezig, who does not abide in the extremes of existence or peace. I think I want to read to you another piece. It's the invitation that I wrote to you to bring you to this retreat, if it called you. And there may be some who haven't read it. Please just bear with me as I read it again. I chose the words carefully, and I want to again sound this note as we enter this time of study and contemplation and practice together. Life's song of holy praise for the lovely planet Earth, teachings and practices for transformation. Life's song of holy praise is a canticle, a song of praise from life to our motherly planet Earth. It is given now for the first time publicly as medicine for our minds in a time of sweeping planetary changes. I've given this practice numerous times in small retreat settings only. So that's what's meant by saying it's the first time it's being given publicly. I wrote down these lines in 2008 during a subtle vision of the great procession of life on Earth, called forth by a student prayer request to bring humans into right relationship with our planet. The student actually made this request very simply, just said, Barbara, please compose a practice or a prayer to help us come into harmony with the good for all and for Mother Earth. At that time, Earth was already demonstrating signs of species extinction, loss of homeland for many kinds of beings, contamination and destruction of the natural world of which we're all made and upon which we all depend, signs of balance lost, life processes out of control, planetary body and atmosphere increasingly compromised. These immense dangers and losses deeply affect the minds, bodies, and behavior of beings on Earth. We are now witnessing and enduring pervasive confusion, grief, aggression, hopelessness, fear, and despair as we experience directly the still early stages of portended planetary changes, meaning changes yet to come. These are the relatively early stages. We need to understand two things here. These earth changes and the sufferings of beings are purification. And what that means is that the causes of these sufferings and conditions are being exhausted, being purified, being brought to completion by the sufferings and the challenges, the difficulties themselves. That's what's meant by purification here. And these sufferings of beings and the changes most urgently needed are in the minds of human beings. I'm going to say a little bit more about that. Our minds, we are not helpless. We are powerful for good or for ill, our choice. And what I have found with this canticle, it came as a vision, as I mentioned here. What I've found with it in my own practice, and others have found something similar, as a practice, not just as a nice song or poem, but an actual practice that we take the responsibility for engaging, and for engaging with the intention of lifting away these great burdens of suffering and confusion that are creating harm for our planet. As a practice, this canticle can transform fear and grief to love and holy praise. There's a great deal of sorrow when somebody we know and care about is suffering and, for example, deeply ill, and we have a resonance with that being. Well, we have that same resonance with the planet that we're made of. We're not the children of Mother Earth. We are Mother Earth's body. So abroad in the land at this time is a lot of sorrow. People may experience it as a heaviness and a kind of depression or confusion, but a lot of it is sorrow because there's an awareness that there is a lot of loss, not just of species, but also of planetary life force. So the possibility of having a practice that transforms fear and grief and loss in this kind of circumstance, particularly made marked by the pandemic, from this transformation comes a freeing of our natural love, which is why there's grief, and holy praise, which is the natural song of the human heart. And I can't help thinking of other species as well, having their own ways of voicing praise. But holy praise is natural to us when love arises unfettered and unhindered in the human heart. Gratitude and praise are right there with it. So it was striking to me that this vision expressed itself finally in words as a canticle. So so that's the invitation for how to be here and why to be here together. You need me to bring this closer. Hi, everybody. Closer now. Okay. Thank you. But then it's hard to read. It's all right. I'll figure it out. It's good. Thanks, Billy. This is our tech wizard, without whom these amazing Dharma offerings that have been online day after day after day in this center and many centers, the Dharma is just pouring out all over the world. And here at the Garchen Institute, Billy is the person who makes the connection for us in the electronic dimension. So the invitation to come together in this retreat, I want to acknowledge that it's perhaps a little painful to read, and that's okay. It's a painful time we're in. So I think I want to just read it through once for you so that everybody has the words in your minds. Some people are familiar with it, some have just probably downloaded it, but some of you probably haven't seen it at all. And then I'll speak about what it means, and then I will also give a chanted, I'll chant it for you so you know what it sounds like, and take the reading aloud as a reading transmission again, as I spoke of before, that on the basis of that, you have the practice, it's yours. And before I read it, let me just say that in the way that this Canticle arose was, it was literally in the middle of the night. I was very sick, and I started having this vision was arising in the mind. I recognized it as something. It was not a dream. It was something that I was being shown, literally being shown, and I was watching it as it unfolded. And as soon as it completed, I grabbed some paper and a pencil and wrote down what I could remember of it. So this is not something that I composed. This is a description of something seen and experienced. I didn't know at the time if I would ever share it with others, because it is both profound and beautiful, and also can be disturbing to our minds. But it is medicine. It is deeply medicinal. From the time that I received it, I started practicing it. And it has helped me more than I can say to be with the kinds of changes that we're experiencing in our lives and on our planet and in our relations with one another in a way that is in alignment with the teachings and practices that for many years I've had the opportunity to engage in the tradition of the Buddha Dharma that I received in the Tibetan tradition. So let me just read this for you, and then I'll go on to speak a little bit more about it. Life's song of holy praise for the lovely planet Earth. I have been moving on this earth uncounted eons. I have been walking, flowing, creeping, swarming, through her wide skies winging, and in her waters swimming. Her molten gases have been my home, and in swamps thick with mud and grasses, her exuberance has pushed plasma into forms we have all become. I sing her praises, I rejoice in her. I sing her praises, I rejoice in her. Little stones, dew-smitten leaves, wavelets, foams, and thunderous winds and fires, cool shady glades, flinty defiles, light teeming loam and brittle crust, and currents carrying all to sea. Earth has no place I have not known, no substance that has not configured, laboring and joyful, bodies for me. Dry flake, glinting shell, simple phosphorescence, faint glowing star, ornate beetle, ever-giving worm, alate creatures, tiny and immense. All numbers of legs have propelled me, and I have laughed at my many bellies, intimate tickling calligraphy in sands on rocks. I have stood up as grisly and as human, birthed in myriad ways the roar and chirp, and killed with fang and claw, with weapon and with mind. With every breath I am remembering, I am praising. Now I am gathering close my knowledge of them all. What is to lift will lift now. What to fall will fall. At the end, in one stupendous yawn, I will gulp in all my history here. All these forms, their molecules and dust, their memories and desires, all their hatred, fear, and love, their aching, soaring, tender, helpless, groaning, potent, loyal, life-bejeweled love. One last time they will flash like morning web strings in the light and be done. A vast silence will be. And then only praise, praise, praise. Earth praise, air praise, fire praise, water praise, sound praise. All one great singing. Praise, praise, praise. Holy, holy, holy. Praise, praise, praise. I'm going to go ahead and chant it for you now. I have been moving on this earth uncounted eons. I have been walking, flowing, creeping, swarming through her wide skies, winging, and in her waters swimming. Her molten gases have been my home, and in swamps thick with mud and grasses. Her exuberance has pushed plasma into forms we have all become. I sing her praises, I rejoice in her. I sing her praises, I rejoice in her. Little stones, dew-smitten leaves, wavelets, foams, and thunderous winds and fires, cool shady glades, flinty defiles, light teeming loam and brittle crust, and currents carrying all to sea. Earth has no place I have not known, no substance that has not configured, laboring and joyful, bodies for me. Dry flake, glinting shell, simple phosphorescence, faint glowing star, ornate beetle, ever-giving worm, alate creatures tiny and immense. All numbers of legs have propelled me, and I have laughed at my many bellies, intimate tickling calligraphy in sands on rocks. I have stood up as grisly and as human, birthed in myriad ways the roar and chirp, and killed with fang and claw, with weapon and with mind. With every breath I am remembering, I am praising. Now I am gathering close my knowledge of them all. What is to lift will lift now. What to fall will fall. At the end, in one stupendous yawn, I will gulp in all my history here, all these forms, their molecules and dust, their memories and desires, all their hatred, fear, and love, their aching, soaring, tender, helpless, groaning, potent, loyal, life-bejeweled love. One last time they will flash like morning web strings in the light and be done. A vast silence will be, and then only praise, praise, praise. Earth praise, air praise, fire praise, water praise, sound praise. Earth praise, air praise, fire praise, water praise, sound praise. Earth praise, air praise, fire praise, water praise, sound praise. All one great singing. Praise, praise, praise. Holy, holy, holy. Praise, praise, praise. Many, many years ago, I think it was in the early 80s perhaps, I was studying at that time with a Native American teacher who was also a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner and teacher. Her name was Venerable Dahani Iwahu. In Tibetan, her Tibetan name is Pema Sangsin Khandro. And in what context, I don't recall, but in a teaching, as many of her teachings were, she was speaking about the relationship of humans and the planetary body, humans and the earth. And she gave many teachings of that kind over many years, saying very clearly to her students all over the world that the earth was in a time of great need, was becoming depleted, and that our behavior of mind and body and speech was very much a part of that process. She spoke of the concept of bioresonance, by which the thoughts and energies and speech and actions of humans have a mutually resonant relationship with the body, the planetary body, and that even the shapes of mountains and the qualities of climate can be affected by, positively and negatively, by human consciousness and behavior. It was the first time I had heard such a teaching, and it impacted me greatly. But even more, came something that she enunciated on a particular day, in a particular place, at a particular time, none of which I remember specifically, but the words I will never forget. She said that in the times of change, which are known to many in the Americas, at least from what I've been told, these are called the changing times, the great purification times of Earth. And she said that in these times, of which there were already signs, but people were still speaking loosely, I believe, not with great understanding of the changing times as being in the future, but they were already in play at that time. And now, of course, we're in the changing times. There's no question, since everything is changing. And the great activity of the elements of life on our planet is very evident. And the words she spoke after she spoke of bioresonance and the changing times, she said, the elements of life are waiting for direction, are awaiting direction from the minds of humans, from the minds of human beings, from our minds, that the very elements of life are awaiting our minds coming into harmony, coming into right alignment with what is, with truth, with love. She didn't elaborate other than to say that this was a prophecy that she'd received from her elders, and as she is one of my elders, it's a prophecy I received from her. And though I tried to pay attention, I was a good student, trying to be very hard to be a good student in those years, trying harder than being that, I think. But I never forgot this prophecy. I took it as an instruction. I think it was meant that way, but I didn't know what to do with it exactly, other than to do my best to practice what I was given, and I wasn't doing it very well, honestly. But over and over and over again in the years since, I have found myself telling students and companions on the path, disciples, about this prophecy of hers, of Venerable Dahadi Wahu. Because when someone of great and vast wisdom says that the very elements of life on the planet that we all are part of are awaiting direction from the minds of humans, not to take that seriously is more absurd than I can even imagine, and it is not. It means not rising to the responsibility that someone has pointed out. So, as we look now at what's happening on the planet, and it's happening in our actual physical bodies as well. Raging fevers are all over the planet in terms of fire, and raging fevers in human bodies are taking lives. Just as an example, there's the elements of life are out of whack. And so if we hearken to the message of the prophecy that I was privileged to hear in those early years, and we don't then inquire, well, what is my mind's role here? That is really a failure of imagination, a failure of curiosity and a failure of responsibility. So we are being called to pay attention and to take this responsibility. I think that this is unquestionably a very hard thing to hear and to think about, but she is not, and I am not, the only one who's saying this. Garchen Rinpoche since we've been online with our Dharma teachings, there have been occasions where he invites people to gather online for a question and answer session. And they're very, very moving. If you have the opportunity to hear them, they're strikingly undefended. They're brave, generous, and undefended. These questions that come from his disciples and students and people all over the world. No faces and names are attached to any question, so people are very raw and are asking questions that are deeply, deeply felt in their hearts. Questions that arise from their practice and from their life experience and everything. And a question was posed to him just, I think it was about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that I want to read you. And I'll preface it just briefly by saying that in the teachings of the Buddha Dharma on interdependence and impermanence, over and over and over again, one reads reference to, and I have read reference to, impermanence being not just the little daily changes that we're aware of in our lives and the yearly changes in our bodies and circumstances and the changes of the seasons and the obvious examples of impermanence, but reference is made in the Buddha Dharma over and over again to how worlds and world systems are also impermanent. And I confess to you, and this will be no surprise, I'm sure, that I, like many, have not taken that literally. In my face, literally. I believed it to be true. It makes sense. It fits with everything that I've seen and studied about impermanence and interdependence. But now it seems urgent to pay attention to this teaching, that worlds and world systems also are impermanent. So the question that was posed to Rinpoche a couple weeks ago is this: Rinpoche, you have said that this world system as we know it will come to an end, that we are in the degenerate time of disease, the planet will get increasingly hot and will burn up, and the floods will come. Will this described end happen within the next 100 years? So that's the question that was posed to Rinpoche, and his answer is, the exact number of years is actually not really certain. One cannot say that for sure, because it really depends on the people. I hope you're listening really carefully to this. It really depends on the people. He's saying how long the world will last, our world, our planet. It really depends on the people. And then he says, it's possible that things will get better and increase again, and it's also possible that things will just get worse and worse. It depends on the people. If people begin to act in a virtuous way, then also their lifespan, for example, will be extended. And if people act in a destructive way, a negative way, then the suffering in the world will increase. Regarding this term, end or destruction of the world, he says the world, the outer world, the universe, and all sentient beings, everything is impermanent. There is just one thing that will never be destroyed, and that is the mind. Therefore, it's better to just trust in karma and not really think about when exactly is the world coming to an end. Even if the world is coming to an end, that you will take birth in some other world again, because there are millions and millions of different world systems just like this one. So even if this one comes to an end, there's so many others one can take birth in. What is important is not to accumulate negative karma, to trust in karma. So that line, it really depends on the people. If people begin to act in a virtuous way, then the lifespan will be extended. And if people act in a destructive way, a negative way, then the suffering in the world will increase. And His Holiness Dalai Lama quite recently also was asked a question of this nature: when are we going to return to normal? And he said there is not going to be a return to normal. There will be more disease, natural disasters, fires and floods. This is why we have to practice well now. Conditions make good practice possible now, and pray to be reborn in the pure realms. Why would we not believe and take seriously the words of these wise ones? It's very difficult for us to take such things seriously. We are we live in a material world. We're not aware that we've created it. So we don't know that we're already responsible. It's not just that we're responsible for a pandemic. Rinpoche has said the causes of the pandemic that we're currently in are anger, hatred, and jealousy. So when we hear something very specific of that nature about a circumstance that we're all being affected by very viscerally and very intimately, the wise choice is to look within and to see what is happening in my sensorium, in my makeup, in my mind, in my behavior, in my speech that comes from anger, hatred, and jealousy. In other words, how am I, one human being on this planet, contributing to something that is so dramatically affecting every human being on this planet? And there we begin to make a link. When we look within with that simple question, we will see it's available to us in our mind, and through clear awareness, through awareness, we're able to see what is in our minds. We see it all the time. Would you rather have tuna fish or cheese for lunch? We know immediately, unless we have sort of a fixation on both of them, or don't like either of them. But immediately we know what's in our mind. Our thoughts are visible to us. They're available. So when someone of great wisdom says, whose words you have relied upon for perhaps decades, and whose enunciations of what is true you have come to understand and respect because you have directly experienced the truth of their words, and then they say something like this, which is so completely against what we would like to think, we have the same ability to look within our own mind stream to see anger, hatred, and jealousy. And we don't have to see how our anger, hatred, and jealousy has created a pandemic in order to see that anger, hatred, and jealousy are creating negativity, creating problems, creating suffering, if only for ourselves. Right? We are a worthy being. If we're creating suffering only for ourselves, we need to stop that. And the way we stop it is by looking within, seeing it, and taking responsibility for it, shifting gears. Shifting gears, first of all, in intention, and then in habituation, the habits that we have built and the habits that we want to build going forward. What this points us to, this invitation or instruction, and actually I'm going to say it's an urgent exhortation. For many years I've given this as an instruction, but now it's urgent that we pay attention and that we look within with the strong desire, even if it's accompanied by fear and anxiety and resistance, whatever, with the strong desire and intention to begin day after day, begin anew every day, taking responsibility for our mind stream's contribution to the common good or to the common suffering, and even to the suffering or the good of one single sentient being on this planet, and not just humans. So, what I want to talk with you about in the course of today and tomorrow are the how-tos about this. How do we take this responsibility? What's in the way of our taking it seriously? What's in the way of our picking it up as our own contribution to the world and to beings, as a way to purify, to transform, and to turn this great ship of Mother Earth, turn even by a degree, a tiny little degree, turn the angle of cause and consequence, so that we start shifting. I'm going to mix my metaphors here. It's common. I do it all the time. Sorry. So imagine Mother Earth as a great ship, but imagine our mind as a great ship too. And for her to shift, our teachers are telling us, for her to shift requires that we shift now. It's required now. There was an article that I read in the paper couple weeks ago, quoting an Australian man. There were tremendous fires in Australia this last year, and huge swaths of land were denuded, really, of vegetation. It was catastrophic. And this man said, he was being interviewed about the fires and their impact, not just on the land, but on how people were thinking about living in that terrain going forward. And he said, just very simply, I wish I could say his accent, but I don't have that capacity to speak in a good Australian accent. He said, I guess the question asked him, when were things going to go back to normal in Australia? And he said, his words were searing for me. He said, there is no normal. We just have to change. There is no normal. We just have to change. That's us. We is us. And I want very much to share everything I can in the next bit of time that we're together about how we come to understand that, and how we do that, how we understand what that kind of change means, how we discern how to move, and how we actually move and shift and change. Because this is our home, this is our planet, this is our mother. Everything we have and are comes from this earth in the material world. And we are in this world inescapably, and yet we also are not completely of this world. the material world is a material manifestation of causes, and the manifestation exists in a certain form, in a certain way, as long as the conditions exist that support its continued abiding. When the conditions change, and when the causes that have given rise to a certain material manifestation, when those causes are completed karmically, then when the cause is over and the conditions are no longer obtaining, that material manifestation will not continue. We see this all the time in our own lives, and if we don't know about karma, we don't think of it in that way, but we make up stories to explain to ourselves why that delightful experience that we love so much is ending, and we make up sad stories to say about that, and then when something ends that we are happy to see ending, we make up stories about why and how that's ending. But for Westerners, at least, who are not brought up typically with an understanding of karmic cause and consequence, our explanations to ourselves are more like fables than they are the science of mind. So karma is not a spiritual law, it's a universal natural law. Where there is cause, there will be consequence. So that's what the teachings are pointing to, that I've just encapsulated for you briefly. I'm going to take a short break and invite you to do the same. I'll come back and we'll go until 12. It'll be a really short break, so see you in a few minutes. So I touched on karma briefly. I want to speak about karma a bit more extensively right now. When Garchen Rinpoche gave me the 37 Bodhisattva practices, he handed it to me, and in my book I speak of the context in which that happened, which is kind of instructive, but I won't go there right now, but you might enjoy reading it. He said, take it literally, Barbara. Take these instructions literally. We don't always take literally what our Dharma teachers tell us. Sometimes we take their teachings to be pointers to sort of vague and general truths, and sometimes as metaphors and so on. In my experience, I've noticed myself having done that and still having some tendency to do that from time to time. It's like, it's as if I'm a tailor, and I take the Dharma teaching and tailor it to how I can understand it, or how I would like to practice it, or what I would like it to mean. And when I'm busy tailoring the Dharma teachings to my own tastes, and it actually doesn't benefit me to do that. It misses the point, which is take them literally. Now, sometimes literally is explained as not being literal. And I one time, for example, I heard the teaching that there are 84,000 different kinds of minds, and therefore there are in the Buddha Dharma 84,000 different kinds of practice and instructions to suit every different kind of mind. And I asked my Lama, at that time I was in retreat, and I asked my Lama, 84,000 exactly? He said, that means a lot, Barbara. That's what that means, a lot. There may be 84,000, there may not be. I'm not Buddha, I don't know, is what he said to me. But he said, it's a lot. So sometimes it's a pointer to, in that sense. But the teachings on karma are very precise and very specific. I am not a student who has mastered the teachings on karma. I am certainly not a teacher who has mastered the teachings on karma. They're precise and specific and detailed in ways that I have not had or taken the opportunity to study in the kind of depth that I would love to. But I've been studying karma in my mind and in my life. And I've been studying karma in the world of appearances. And I've been studying karma in observing and participating in the lives of others. And I have come to take some things that I have been given about karma very literally, and that has been very positive in terms of my mind and my speech and my behavior coming increasingly, slowly I must say, but increasingly into alignment with the heart essence of the Buddha Dharma, which is love, wisdom, which is unobjectified love, meaning love that doesn't waver or vary according to what the object might be, because there is no object. It is simply love in the absolute, unconditional, limitless, and wisdom meaning the emptiness, the insubstantiality of all created appearances, of all phenomena, including us. We are created phenomena. Anything that comes together will come apart. That's a very good pointer to the emptiness of created phenomena. Garchen Rinpoche describes the creation of karma, and karma simply means cause. That action, it's action, cause and effect, cause and consequent. he says very explicitly, and I invite you to take this literally, that the cause of, that karmic cause is a single moment of a thought or an intention in the mind that is either grasped for or pushed away or elaborated upon. Those are the three vectors. We call them the three poisons. They're just a part of our minds. It's not, we didn't invent them. They're there, but we have a responsibility for how we work with them. And a single thought arising from passion, aggression, or ignorance, grasping aversion or confusion, let's say, confusion meaning ignorance about the nature of reality, a single cause, single thought in the mind that is interacted with becomes karmic cause. The mind that is stably resting in its natural state, the natural state meaning the state, the original state of mind before a thought arises in it. The original state meaning the true nature of our mind. A thought arising in the natural state when the person or the being is able to simply maintain that state without reacting to, without getting involved with that thought that's arising, that thought is free to arise and dissolve again instantly in the state of mind, which is the same state, the same nature as the thought itself. Thought meaning doesn't necessarily mean a cognitive process. It can be an impulse, it can be a memory, it can be a movement of emotion, that all of which register in the mind, and they're referred to as arisings. They arise in the mind. If there's no interaction, no reaction or interaction with that arising, it will, of its own accord, dissolve. And that is because its nature and the nature of the mind itself are the same nature. It's like a wave arising in the water. A wave on the surface of the water appears momentarily as a wave, but in the next moment, it is again, it's simply in its own watery nature, one with the body of water. Our mind and our thoughts have a relationship like that. So the thought that arises, that is allowed to simply dissolve again, does not create karma. A thought that arises, or an arising that is interacted with, creates karma. Now, we're talking about both good and negative karma. We Americans tend to think of karma only when we think of something negative, but our job is to create as much positive karma as we can for ourselves and others. So when I say that you can tell what's going on in your mind simply by looking within, it's because that there is an arising in the mind, and you know what it is by that inward attention that you give to it momentarily, and we do that all day long. We're constantly giving rise to arisings in the mind, and we're continuously aware of some of them, but we're not aware of most of them. And very often we look to the side rather than right at something that's arising because we sense it. We get some kind of glimpse or some sense that there's a negativity of some sort arising, and often we go right past that one rather than turning and looking right at it. When we look right at it and do not engage, it will dissolve. What sees the thought is simply your ordinary awareness. If you look at a can of soup and see what its label says, that's ordinary, clear awareness that sees that. It's the same clear awareness that sees the thoughts arising and dissolving in your mind. So this is not an inaccessible method for greeting karma, greeting karmic potential. This is a very accessible method. You use it all the time. But what we don't do all the time is cultivate the resting state or the natural state, the state in which we are looking not just at the thought or the arising in the mind, but we're looking with that same inward attention, we're looking at what sees that. In other words, we're inviting ourselves to look also at clear awareness itself. And this is where we're going to do most of our practice this weekend. So I'm not going to go into great detail now, but we'll do some of this practice this afternoon as well as tomorrow on Sunday. But what I wanted to outline here or point to is that this charge that we are given by our wise ones and to take responsibility for our own mind's relationship to our planet and to our community that are part of the planetary body, to take responsibility for how we are interacting subtly and not so subtly, but we want to come eventually to understand the subtle interactions. How we are interacting is potentially causative in nature of the tremendous dislocations and sufferings of the planet and the planetary beings in this time. And the teachings are saying that, yes, this world system too will come to an end. And two of our great teachers, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche, are saying, yes, we are in the process that can lead to that at this time. Now, we could say that always the planet is in the process of coming to its end, the same way the moment that a child is born, that child's death is inevitable. But I think these two great teachers, these two great beings of immeasurable love and compassion and wisdom, are pointing us to something more pressing than, oh yes, everything comes to an end. They're saying the causes are in play now for not only great suffering in the immediate, but a worsening of that suffering and disharmony in the coming time. And the coming time is tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. In our lifetime, we have the possibility of making a difference here. And in my way of understanding, if we have the possibility of making a difference to what happens on Earth, in the direction of less suffering, of more ease, of more bountiful and beauteous life for not just humans, but all forms of life on Earth, if we have the possibility of even a slight contribution to that effect between now and the time that we die, why wouldn't we change everything changeable in order to find ways to take that responsibility upon ourselves? And the why wouldn't we is not a rhetorical question. I think we have to look at why don't we. This is not new information for us that things are not great in our societies. We've been seeing that for quite some time, probably since we were born in some way. There are problems, there are things. The person who specifically requested that I give these teachings at this time is a person who wrote to me. He said the world is in trouble in some way. Capital letters, the world. The world is in trouble in some way. Please give teachings and practice for a life song of holy praise for the lovely planet Earth. The world is in trouble. The beings of this world are in trouble. We're all in trouble, not just now, but we always have trouble in our lives. It comes with the territory of being a sentient being, living in relative reality. It's not exotic. It's nothing exotic about the fact that we suffer, and that we create suffering for ourselves and others. What we seem to think is exotic is the possibility that we might not do so. Do you want that to be exotic, or do you want that to be commonplace in your life? That when you recognize the potential for creating good or creating harm, you make the choice to create good. Because I spend much of my life, even before the pandemic, in semi-retreat condition, I have a lot of solitude. And so I practice a lot the inward attention that I've mentioned, looking at the condition of my mind. And increasingly practice on clear awareness, looking at what observes the mind. But looking at the content of my mind as the day goes by, if I'm honest with myself, which I sometimes am, I will acknowledge that there are little impulses of not just laziness, which is considered a fault in the Dharma, but antipathy or resistance or grasping for something that I want just because I want it, regardless of what the consequences might be to myself or to others. Some of these things are petty and small and seem to not warrant too much attention. Others of them are quite egregious. And I think if you look into your own mind's condition over the course of a day, you might be able to say the same thing I've just said. Some of these things are, small, trivial, not very harmful, so we just let them go. And some of them are quite egregious, quite serious in their implications if we actually acted upon them. And then sometimes without having recognized the thought, we're already in the action before we've seen that there's a harm-doing event unfolding in our minds and our behavior. In this last year, I've had the occasion to look at certain aspects of my behavior that have been very shocking and disturbing to me. As time goes by, in doing serious spiritual practice, you'll see everything. We don't get out of here without seeing everything. If we're on the path to the ultimate, to enlighten, what's called enlightenment, we'll have to see the whole thing. How our mind does it, how our mind makes a place for a shocking or dismaying or sad to acknowledge, motivation, and then unspools that into action in some way or another. We get to look at that. So I've been able to see some of this, and in a clarity that I hadn't had before. And I spoke earlier of subtle and more gross manifestations of our confusion, or I think I spoke of that, meant to. I'll certainly will do that more as the day goes by, perhaps, but it's easy to see your anger or your grasping, for example, when it's just shockingly displayed in all its glory, that you're having a temper tantrum, or you're spitting with rage at somebody, or you just absolutely can't do without this thing you want, or this person you want, or this feeling you want. You must have it. You just have to have it. When it's, they even made a film called that, right? She's got to have it or something. There was a film called that. I thought it was great. When it's gross, meaning, I don't mean disgusting, although it might be disgusting. When it's gross in the sense that it's a very obvious, discernible, unavoidably visible or audible or sense, in terms of senses manifestation, it's hard not to see it. Even then, we keep going. Very often, we keep going on that trajectory. When it's very subtle, it's very easy not to see that you've seen it. Please note the way I spoke about that. It's very easy to see, not to see that you've seen it. A very subtle manifestation of self-grasping, of wanting something or not wanting something, could be as simple as, just a slight kind of movement of desire for something that you like to eat and that's not really in your best interests, And the next thing you know, you've eaten it, right? What happened to the space between the seeing and the eating? Well, you were not looking at your mind and connecting it with your behavior. You just went right past that warning signal. It's like stepping on a rake in the lawn. The handle comes up and hits you between the eyes. Sometimes it has to be like that for us to see what's going on in our minds, but usually not. All we have to do really is look. And then the challenging part is look and pay attention. Then we get to see what seeds of karma we're sowing in our mind stream that are definitely going to take on appearance and manifestation if we don't allow them to dissolve on their own, or if we don't purify them by practice. In other words, by changing our intention and practicing to bring our mind into alignment with our highest intention, the very highest intention, which is to liberate all beings, including ourselves, from ignorance and suffering. And all beings includes our motherly earth. So this play of karmic cause and consequence is actually entirely, this is bad news and good news, it's entirely within our control. You should take what I said literally just now. You should take that literally. We are not well practiced enough to be able at this stage of our development, probably, for myself, definitely. I'm not at the stage where I can see every thought and let none of them go. In other words, let them all go rather than interacting with them. But I'm not at that stage of practice. And when I become adept at practice to that degree, maybe I'll tell you if we're all still here together, but I think it's highly unlikely that that's going to happen that quickly. But Garchen Rinpoche can say that of himself. He tells the truth. He can say, sometimes I miss one, but mostly I can see my mind because I'm looking at it all the time. So that's a high bar. Let's take that as our intention. If we're serious, or becoming serious, or even considering becoming serious about taking responsibility for our mind's condition in relation to the condition of our motherly earth and all of our relations, our relatives on this planet. We need to get our minds into our own hands, and like a person learning to ride a horse, we need to take the reins into our own hands for our condition of mind, because as my earlier teacher said, the very elements of life on earth are waiting for our direction in order to come into harmony, in order to come into alignment, in order to come into co-creativity at the highest level. When the elements are in harmony, that means also us, our bodies, our emotions, our very presence with ourselves and with others and with our communities, our families, and with the earth on which we walk, and whose air we breathe, and whose sun warms us, coming through our atmosphere, and whose waters we drink, and whose enormous space in which our earth exists, an enormous space within the earth herself, her spaces, they all echo the sound of creation. What arises has sound. So, earth praise, air praise, fire praise, water praise, sound praise. Earth praise, air praise, fire praise, water praise, sound praise. Earth praise, air praise, fire praise, water praise, sound praise. All one great singing. Praise, praise, praise. Holy, holy, holy. Praise, praise, praise. The natural sound is praise, arising from love, resounding in emptiness. I want to be one of those who's praising, and I want that for you too. And I want that for all of us, that we all be in the state of recognizing things as they are, recognizing what creates good and what creates harm, choosing what creates good, all day long choosing what creates good, and sleeping in the peace of having chosen good all day long, and regarding suffering with limitless compassion, that our suffering also we regard with compassion, and suffering of all beings we regard with great compassion, and do everything we can to lift away the suffering of beings, including the suffering of our planetary mother. I want that for you, and I want that for me. I think that's where we'll end now for this morning, and we'll come back at 2. As you eat your lunch, maybe at some point before you have a meal, and after, you'll go out and walk on the earth a little bit. And even if there's concrete between you and the earth, concrete is made of the earth. It's still earth. So don't think that you're separated from the earth by the concrete you're walking on. Every single thing we possess and create and see and taste and feel and touch and hear is created by the earth materials. We're all that. So take a walk on whatever surface is available to you. Look around. If you're feeling unnerved or discomforted in any way by what I've spoken of so far today, know that we will be practicing. We'll talk more and practice together this afternoon. And if you have access to a tree that is just happens to be in your area, or is a special tree for you, or one that you see every day without perhaps even paying any attention. You go out and just communicate with the tree that you're here too. The two of you are here together. You and the tree are here together, and may that be a good thing. So, see you this afternoon. Thank you very much for being here this morning.